Oh hey, this is Matt Fetcher from AudioKit. Let's get started.
What is up, App Music Nation? Today I have an interview with the creator of Jam Looper and Disco Videos. Their apps have been downloaded over 250,000 times, and this is a really inspiring story and lots of great advice for how to get your app featured by Apple, different marketing strategies. There's something in here for everyone, so let's get started. You have two amazing apps. Both have been featured by Apple.
One has like almost 200,000 downloads now, and the newest one has 50,000 already, and it's just been out for a few weeks. So do you want to tell people a little about Jam Looper and Disco Videos so they know what you do?
Sure. So we're two guys from Israel. I'm Yaron and my partner Nir Kosover. I do all the development, and he does all the design, all the product, a lot of the ideas, the creative ideas. He does all that stuff. And we've been working together for about 2 years. So the idea for Jam Looper was our first app. We did it as a side project while we were working, on our regular day jobs. I was an iOS consultant, and Nir was working at Wix, which is a big Israeli startup that kind of lets you design your own websites. And we both said we were just walking down one of the boulevards in Tel Aviv, and we're like, let's do an app as a side project. You'll do all the design and all the product stuff, and I'll do all the development. And we thought, okay, what would be useful for us? And we're both amateur guitarists. And we looked around at some of the apps for looping or for like practicing with yourself. And there were a few nice ones, but nothing that we really liked. So we said, let's do a little app where you can record some chords, and then you can jam with yourself. We wanted the app to be, we didn't know this ahead of time, and that's kind of become our like modus operandi on how we do all our apps, is like the actual process of creation should be as fun as when you're creating. And that kind of, they both inspire each other. So so the app is kind of let's give you something that will be fun to use while you're making music. And once we had something we liked, we just started coding it. And we did a few more iterations on that. It actually wasn't a very big project. I think we worked on it, I think it was maybe like over a period of 2 months, but it was something we worked on like in the evenings or weekends as a side project while we were doing other stuff. And yeah, then we released it. Initially, it didn't really take off. It was still one of the more successful apps that I'd done up until then. And it had maybe 100 users a day, which was pretty nice. But then it was featured by Apple, and that's when it kind of took off. And right now it's one of the top apps when you search for Looper, which is kind of a word that a lot of people search for. So we get a lot of organic traffic for it right now, even if it's not featured all the time.
That is super awesome. Congratulations, my friend. What tips do you have for developers out there that want to get their app featured by Apple?
It's a great question. So there's definitely a few things you can keep in mind to get the app featured, and also just to get it visible in the iOS ecosystem. So featuring is definitely one of the best ways to do that. The advantage of featuring is just the scale is enormous. With Jam Looper, we were the first, like in the US App Store, we were the first app that appeared in the top left corner when you went into the App Store. So, and you can see like in the iTunes analytics, I think like you see the millions of people were exposed to the app icon and had a chance to download the app. So it's definitely, in terms of scale, it's great. In terms of actually like converting people to become paid users or long-time users, those are actually not the best kind of users, because most likely they weren't looking for that kind of tool specifically. They weren't looking for a looper. They just saw like a cool name or a cool icon and wanted to try it out. But it's obviously it's a great way to get in front of a lot of people. And one there's no like magic trick to how to get featured, but there's a few things you can keep in mind, and Apple is pretty upfront about that as well. One big thing is Apple is always trying to promote whatever is new and shiny and exciting in iOS. And right now, for example, there's ARKit, which allows you to like create augmented reality apps. And if you look at the App Store's featured page, there's always a section like the best new AR apps. So if you kind of build something that Apple is interested in promoting, obviously it's for their own business reasons, because they're creating devices, new, stronger devices that are more relevant to augmented reality. So that's a great way to do that. So that's more on the software side. Then on the hardware side, like the iPhone 6s added 3D Touch. which kind of senses how, how strong you, not just detect steps on the screen, but kind of senses how strong you're tapping the screen. So if you build an app that supports that, that's another great way to get it featured. So those are really direct things you can do. Then there's more subtle things. Apple really likes good UI, and an interesting usage of like UI on the phone. So I think that's kind of what happened with Jam Looper. It's not in terms of like, I don't think it's not as good as a hardware looper. It's not. We're always trying to improve like the audio quality, but it's not. That's like the best thing about it. The best thing about it is probably the experience and how fun it is to use it to make music. And I think Apple really connected to how the app uses UI and colors and gestures and all kinds of things. It's only something that can exist on an iPhone and on a mobile device, because it's all about swiping and moving and long pressing. And everything's very animated and stuff like that. So Apple has like their human interface guidelines, the HIG, which is like what they believe in how to create great apps. So that's definitely, I recommend everyone reading that and kind of trying to aim to that. But on the other hand, if you go by that, you're going to get kind of a more vanilla app that really looks like a lot of the other apps. And with Jam Looper, we kind of did the exact opposite. We did an app that looks like nothing else, and that's kind of what got us, I think, in front of the editorial team. So both ways are good. I know I have a good friend who did like a really app that looks exactly like, it looks like how an app would look if Apple would have done it, and that got featured. And then we did something like exactly the opposite of what Apple would do, and it also got featured. So it's just about doing something interesting and eye-catching and fun, and kind of like having the Apple values and something useful.
Did you have to get Apple's attention, or did they find your app on their own?
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say. So you can't really, there's no way to really reach out to them. There are a few, like on the website, there's a few places where you can submit your app to be considered, but I'm not sure how effective that really is. So with Jam Looper, was mostly just random. I think they just noticed the app. But one thing I would recommend is if you can attend the conference, WWDC. It's hard to attend because there's a lottery where only 5,000 people are picked every year, and it's expensive and it's hard to get there for some people. But I think that there are some sessions there where you can get feedback from Apple on your apps. And I do, like, our featured was kind of when I was also like a little bit after I was attending the conference. So I kind of feel like once you've attended, you might show up on the radar and there's more of a chance of getting featured. So if you have an app that you really believe in, I would definitely try to attend the conference. And you're going to meet a lot of people from Apple. There's labs there where you can talk to Apple engineers, and you can go talk to someone who gave a lecture. And there's this like feedback lab that I was mentioning. So I think all those things give you kind of a potential of meeting people that could help you do that. But then the main thing is really doing something that's eye-catching and special. And obviously on the other side, Apple's very sensitive to things that aren't very Apple-like. So if you're very pushy about things in the app, or if it's, there's a lot of values that Apple believes in, and if you kind of adhere to those values, you'll have a lot of success. And then all the marketing materials are like how the icon looks and how the screenshots look, and they added the ability to have app preview. So you definitely, like, if they've added the ability to do an app preview, like a video preview of that, then they want you to do it. They haven't added that. Like, they're going to feature apps that have done the video. So you should definitely take some time and put together a good video. Oh, I just thought of another really good tip, localization. So Jam Looper and Disco videos are localized into 9 languages. So Japanese, Korean, Chinese, both simplified and traditional, Brazilian, Portuguese, French, German, Italian, and I think that's it. I might have forgotten one. We're going to might do Spanish soon. But the minute that if you want to get fit in countries that are not the US, you have to be localized in that local language. I mean, if there's a really big famous app, you're not going to block it from getting featured. But the smaller, more indie apps, if you want to be, like, we were featured in Korea for over a year, just because like the app store is kind of not changing that much. So we had a top banner in the music section, and it was just around for like a year. So one of the reasons it was specifically in Korea because the app was localizing to Korean. And I think a lot of people appreciate that the app, especially if they're languages which are very far from English, like Asian languages, people really appreciate that it's localized in their own language. And it takes it can take you maybe 2 hours to localize the app. It's really, really easy to do. Like you send it to a third party service that does a translation, and then Xcode or iOS is very built towards localizing, and it's definitely worth the effort. And then you also increase your chances of getting featured.
And you've had the opportunity to experiment with a couple of different business models. With 250,000 users, you can really kind of see what works at scale. So you've done in-app purchases, you've tried subscriptions. And so what kind of feedback and results have you seen from the various revenue models? Is one better than the other? Are in-app purchases better than subscription? And where do you think these things are going?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really interesting, and it's kind of the things that you kind of need to try out and see how that works, because there's no clear logic about it. So with Jam Looper, we have an in-app purchase that kind of unlocks the pro features in the app, which instead of 4 channels, you get 8 channels to record, and you get unlimited access to the effects, which otherwise you can just try for only 1 track. And so kind of around 2.5–3% of the people have bought that over the years since we've added that. Initially, the app actually didn't have any pro features. We added that in a big version 2 update.
Okay.
So yeah, about 3% of the people buy that. With Disco videos, what we try to do is explore the subscriptions model, which is something that Apple is also kind of recommending and pushing. And I think the reason for that is that everyone uses the apps on their phones constantly, and there's some really amazing tools on the phone. It's like a little computer, right? And you can do anything with it, And I have my toolkit of like my Swiss Army knife of apps that I use all the time for music recording, for listening to podcasts, for reading news, anything that you want to do. You kind of have your app for that, and you want to get. As a user, you want to get the best apps available, and to do that, you need to support developers in an ongoing manner. And the problem with in-app purchases, the one-time in-app purchase, is that if you're using the app for a couple of years and you just paid for you paid $5 for it 2 years ago, the developer it's very hard for them to really work with that to improve the app for you. And there's also the element of some people are just going to use the app for one time or for 1 month, and then some users are going to use it for a couple of years, and it's worth more to them. So the one-time in-app purchase doesn't really reflect that. And the subscription model is kind of a good way for that, because if you really like the app, if you're really using it in an ongoing fashion, then you subscribe to it. You can cancel whenever you want, but that way the developer kind of gets paid for as long as you're actually using the app, and it kind of reflects the actual usage rather than just an impulse buy. And then if someone wants to just use it one time and just try out something, maybe record one song, or if for disco videos, if someone wants to use a pro filter or remove the watermark, they can just subscribe for it for 1 month, which costs right now it's $3. So it's not a big deal. They can do that. So it's something that we definitely feel that that's a way we can actually make a business around that. Whereas with the one-time purchase, it's much harder to do.
And if someone does subscribe, they get to keep all their content. You don't take anything away. I think that's what people are worried about. They don't want to subscribe and then not own the things they've created. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're always making the paid features kind of like premium stuff, and never try to hurt the core experience. So with Jam Looper, the core experience is you want to record a song, you have 4 channels to do that, and whatever you do is always free. Like you can always record, you can always keep your music, you can always do whatever you want with it. And then the pro stuff is kind of like, the icing on the cake. So you get effects for each channel, you get 8 channels instead of 4, and we have a lot of things that we might add coming up, like content, beats, our own beats that you would add to that, more effects, and other ideas that we have for the future. But yeah, we never want to hurt the core capability. With Disco videos, you can always record videos in a bunch of free filters that we have, and then there's just a watermark for Disco videos. Then if you want to remove the watermark, and if you want to access some of the more pro filters, or we just today we added text effects. So if you want to access the pro text effects, then you might need to go pro. But we never want to harm like the core functionality, and definitely never have a situation where someone they created something and we kind of take it away from them. There is something kind of like that in Disco videos, where if you if you see a pro filter, we clearly mark it as you're now in a pro filter, but we'll still let you record the video, even though you're not going to be able to share it. And we don't do that to trick you into buying the app, but rather to have you experience it and actually try it out if you want. We don't want to block you from trying something out. And then the first time you do this, you can even share it. Like, we give you a free pro share. And something we want to add in the future is that those videos will be saved in any way. If you want to go pro in the future, you will be able to save them, to share them. And that's kind of like a win-win, because that gives people another motivation to subscribe in the future, and also doesn't block them. So it's kind of sensitive, but I think like the core value is never be evil. Don't take people's content from them. Don't kind of lock them in, but just give them extra stuff for subscribing. And if they like the app, if they're using it a lot, yeah, we have people who've been using it for 2 years over and over again. Like, we see in our analytics, we see like the cumulative how long they've used it lifetime, and some people have used it for over 24 hours, like Jam Looper, and some people have like these very, very long 2-hour sessions. And the average sessions is pretty long, because it's like a very you use it to actually record music, so you have like an intent, and that usually takes you some time. So yeah.
So once your app was featured, were you guys just like high-fiving each other, like, yay, we've made it, we're officially app developers now?
Different.
So it was a side project at that point, and we were doing our other things, and we had no intention of going full-time on it at that point. So yeah, it was like I was actually at another friend's place. We were playing some music at the time, and I wasn't with near my partner. And suddenly, like, my phone started vibrating, and I started getting a bunch of chats from users. And so we have this feature in the app where users could just chat with us and give us feedback and tell us about the app. So before that, the app was around for 3 or 4 months. I'd gotten a chat here, a chat there, maybe once a week. And then suddenly, like this one evening, it was just going crazy. I had like 10 or 20 chats, and while we were playing some music, so I started like looking around, and I went into the analytics, and I saw that suddenly we had like a big spike in users, thousands of users, and looked at the App Store. You don't get any notification about getting featured. You just see it like everyone else, and we're just like right in the front spot. So at that point, the app didn't even have any monetization. So we were like super happy, but it was more like our side project is doing well. That's really cool, and less of like our business goals are going to be achieved now. But when it happened with the second app, with Disco Videos, we were much more prepared for that. We kind of we launched it knowing that we might get some kind of feature, and we had a big spike like right at the beginning, and that's kind of jump started the app. I'm not sure what we would have done had it not been featured, because that's a lot of like how we got started and got like initial revenue, which we can work with to advertise and kind of drive growth from there. So it's been very exciting. And actually today, like a big version 2 update of Disco Videos with like a whole new UI and a bunch of other new features. So we're also hoping that will be promoted. And that's another about how to get your app kind of featured. A lot of updates, because every update is actually another pitch to the editorial team for getting your app featured. If you update your app once a year, you're not going to get featured during that time, because the only time you're kind of like up for getting featured is when you do a new update. And of course, if the update is exciting and has a ton of new features, you have more chances of getting. So we just did like the whole redesign of the UI. We didn't do that to get featured. We did it because we felt it was the right thing. But we definitely know that it could be like a good driver to getting featured like that. So that's like a side benefit to that.
Are there any other marketing tips you have for developers?
So I think the most important thing about marketing apps is kind of adapting to it's a very like changing ecosystem, and things that worked before are not going to work now. So it's all about like kind of seeing what people are succeeding with, and kind of shifting towards that. I think like paid apps were a much bigger thing 7 years ago than they are today, where now you really want to be a free app so people can actually try it out and then have like the in-app purchases. Search ads, which were just added a year ago, are a huge thing, because you can really, it does cost money, but you can get your app in front of a lot of people and try different business models, which was something that was really hard to do before that. You could do that through Facebook, but still, Facebook is kind of like a different market than really advertising directly in the App Store. I think one of the things that I wish I knew earlier that I kind of know more is that, things just take time, and you got to kind of let them simmer or just like wait for them to kind of boil. I had a lot of apps that I don't think I gave them enough time to like really take off. One of them was called SnapX. It was like kind of a very similar thing to Snapchat. I think Snapchat is amazing, and it nailed kind of a lot of things in the UI and just how people wanted to use the app. But I think like we did something about like chatting through photos when it was still kind of initial. And I think we just didn't give it enough time because, things take time to kind of pick up. And, one of the most important things around apps is app store optimization, like where your app is featured with all kinds of words. So for example, with Jam Looper, we're right now around number 2 or 3 when you search for Looper, which is something that a lot of people search for. So we weren't, you don't get to number 2 or 3 just by putting out the app. It usually takes a few months. Sometimes it can take a few years for like the Apple algorithms to really figure out where you should be. And I don't think there's any really way to hack that because, everyone's going to write Looper in their keywords. But then I think Apple really looks at how many people download the app. Like if someone is searching for Looper, what are the chances that they do eventually download their app, and your ratings, all that kind of stuff. So all those things, like building a good rating in the App Store, getting a good ranking good in all kinds of searches, and getting a large user base, all of those things take time. So yeah, you should definitely just wait, and it grows. And you can maybe work on other things while like you can build something, put it in the App Store, work on other things, and then see how it does. But yeah, that would be a great tip. So one would be always go with the ecosystem. 2 is let things take time. 3 is, you can always, I right now I'm doing with my partner Nir, we're doing this full time, but most of these 7 years I've been a contractor or working full time at a company. So indie development is great, but you should always balance it out with just regular gigs and jobs. And because everyone is interested in the mobile ecosystem, there's always something you can do and kind of balance out the indie work. So maybe you'll have a period where the indie stuff takes off more or less, but you can also balance it out with just contracting or paid work. So there's a good way to mix between the two.
So you've got a lot of data and a lot of sales worldwide. What countries do you see the most sales from? What should developers concentrate on and focus their energy on when it comes to sales?
So overall, I would say the US is definitely the biggest market. That's where people spend the most money on apps. I think people are open to doing that. They're very aware of paying for apps. So that's definitely the number one market. And that's also, if you're going to be advertising, it's also the most expensive market because a lot of people have this understanding and they're focused on that market. But in Japan has been really good for us. So with Jam Looper, it's really been mostly US and then a few countries in Europe and Asia, but mostly US. And then with Disco Videos, just because Japan has been our biggest market, just in terms of overall users, it's also been like a great market for paying users. But at the end of the day, still, even though we have less users in the US for Disco Videos, it's still, I think, it's maybe the biggest market or the second biggest market after Japan. And then all the other countries where we're featured, like Korea, South Korea, and Russia, and China, also a lot of users from there. China was kind of surprising to see that people are willing to pay for apps. I wasn't sure if that was the case over there in terms of like the app economy, but I think it is. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. One of the top downloaded apps is built with AudioKit. I just encourage everyone to download this app. The UI is really intuitive. It's a free app, and it's just really nice. So what are some of the things users are actually doing with your app? Have you noticed any like cool use cases?
So honestly, one of the things we feel we've kind of missed out on is seeing how our users use the app. Because that's something we want to really improve, because the app is 100% client side, which is when you're building a side project, one of the nice things you can do is kind of limit yourself to, I think one of the keys to success in actually building and shipping products is not to do everything. So we said this app is only going to be client side. And then as a developer, it's 50% of the work because there's no server side to handle it all. There's no worried about downtime. People have it on their phone and it just works. But then the downside of that is that there's no place for people to share, and there's no place for you to see what people have actually created. And what we're trying to do, so we don't really, we actually have a really cool option in the app where you can just chat with us and tell us if you like the app and if you have any questions or any issues. And a lot of people, I think we've chatted with hundreds of users so far, and it's fun. Like, you get to know what they're up to, what they're using it for, what they're missing, and what problems they have. And then sometimes just funny people just start chatting with you and sending you pictures. And then in this case, sometimes people would send us their recordings. So, but other than that, we haven't seen enough of that. So one of the things we're going to do soon is kind of try to build a community around it. We actually had people on Twitter reach out and ask for that. So maybe a Facebook page where people can post their music, or allow people to actually post their music to like a Jamlooper website, and with like a URL for each song, and maybe eventually make it more of a social thing. There's always the thought of maybe allow people to write music collaboratively.
So a lot of people email us at AudioKit that they want to become music app developers, but they're also learning the skill set that'll help them in the job market. For example, in Silicon Valley, if you know Swift, you can basically sneeze and get a 6-figure job. So even if their app isn't a big hit, they're still learning a skill that they can fall back on and have a career with, if they like it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because the value, you could build an amazing app, and then it would be hard to make $150,000 from that app. But then your value would be to a company, any company, or even specifically taking the skills you learned from, building your own app and shipping it and marketing it, which are like invaluable. And specifically, even maybe someone's looking for AudioKit skills, and you could easily translate that into a lot of money from working with another company. So yeah, I think the balance is key, because you still want to have your own stuff, and it's fun, and you want to succeed with it. So just kind of balancing it out is cool.
And I think what you said is really important to people, to like not give up. It's like J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter series. If you believe in your app, just keep plugging away and make more apps.
Yeah, and part of it is believing, and the other part is that sometimes the market takes time to, maybe you've hit a market a little before it was popular, like I mentioned with like the SnapX app, and maybe it just takes time for your app to kind of float above water. Maybe you'll, just by being out there, you'll learn what you need to change and kind of what you need to do and how you need to adapt. Maybe Apple will launch like a really good technology that's super relevant to what you're doing. Like maybe, you'll be working on something super cool with music, and then Apple launches ARKit, and it'll say, oh, I should like making this synthesizer in augmented reality. That's like the killer app for that. And you already had all this stuff ready, and you just needed to plug it into whatever came out. And you never know when that's going to happen, right? It might happen next year. So you should always keep working on your stuff and whatever you're passionate about, and you'll definitely have like the places where it can take off. And it won't always take off, but the other thing I believe in is also like balancing between your own apps and like paid jobs or contracting. And the other thing is balancing between your own projects. So you could have 2 different projects. Then if maybe one of them doesn't take off, maybe the other one will. And do like prototyping something, especially with like all the power that you get from something like AudioKit. You can really prototype some cool things very quickly, and and see where that goes. And yeah, and Jamlooper also, we worked on it, like the total time period between when we thought about it and released it was 2 months. And we worked on it only like evenings and weekends. So it probably took us something like 3 weeks as well, like the initial version. So yeah, sometimes the best things are just like when you have all the knowledge and you have the right tools, and then you're just ready to kind of put them together. And that usually doesn't take as much time as you'd think. Did
you experience any other benefits from being featured? Any side effects or people that found your app that you never even expected?
So for Disco Videos, because we were featured on launch in Russia, Japan, Korea, and China, so almost all of our users come from there. So that was very surprising to see. Like now that we've kind of explored those markets a little more, just because we were featured there, and we see some of the apps that are succeeding there, we kind of feel like our vibe is we kind of fit the crowd well, and it wasn't by chance that we were selected there. But yeah, it's a lot of fun because we also see like the videos that people have shared on Disco Videos. Do you know the singer Psy in Korea that had the song
of course.
Gangnam Style?
Yeah, you mean the biggest YouTube star of all time? Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the first users that kind of started posting videos from Disco Videos is one of his dancers. This was around like we launched around Christmas, and there was a big concert in Seoul for Psy, and two of his dancers. I'm guessing they kind of knew each other, and they like maybe one introduced the app to the other. So the app was featured in the main app store on the top as a banner, and I guess two of the dancers downloaded it, and they were doing videos like from backstage, and just like showing scenes from the concerts, and that was really amazing. And we had like Christmas videos from Tokyo, and we had some videos from Russia. So yeah, it was really, and those were most of the videos that were shared were actually from those countries. So that was great because it was very different to what we had known from the States or Israel.
What advice do you have for people who want to get into making music apps?
So my advice is just start. That's like the most important thing. Don't think about it too much. Don't worry about it. Take whatever, like the core of whatever is interesting to you, whatever you're passionate about. With Jam Looper, like the core of that was just recording yourself and then playing that back and recording yourself with that. Maybe you're excited about like audio synthesis. Maybe you're excited about making like a sampler app. Maybe like anything. Maybe you just want to play some, have a cool way to play music. Maybe effects. Whatever you're interested in, just start playing with it. I think that AudioKit, like with the playgrounds, is the perfect way to actually play with it, and then you can easily take a lot of that code or the sample apps, take a ton of that stuff and like put it into your own app and just start playing around without worrying about it too much. And the great thing about if you're like in this mindset of playing and trying out, which AudioKit really kind of facilitates, then there's a good chance you'll kind of stumble upon something you didn't exactly think about. Maybe you had like a specific angle, but just like the result of what you're doing will actually be even more interesting than what you thought, and that will kind of lead you to creating the amazing new app that you want to do. With a lot of our stuff, it's been that way. Like all the filters and the effects in Disco Videos, we didn't really plan them out. We kind of just like we built tools to like kind of our own playgrounds to tweak all the different parameters and factors, and then we would just play with that and kind of see how that worked. We did something really interesting, which is we connected all the visual filters to the audio aspects. So if a track is playing back, the track has amplitude and it has a beat, and we kind of automatically sense that using AudioKit, and then all the visual filters react to that. And that's kind of like the secret sauce of Disco Videos, is that audio and video kind of play together. And we had that idea like kind of beforehand, but most of it came from just like, let's plug in the amplitude tracker to the amount of filter that you see in the visual filter, and let's see how that looks. Oh, that looks really cool. Or let's tone it down a little bit. It's connected to the audio effect. And we were just playing around, and that kind of, the app was created, was kind of like a lot of playing around with that. So I would just urge people to start playing around, not worry about too much about what they're doing. And then there's the shipping phase, which is different, where you kind of take all the things that you tried and all the little ideas that you had, and you want to put them into a product. That's super hard. My partner Nir is really good at kind of packaging everything that way, and is amazing at that. But that's a whole different skill set. But first of all, you got to have the idea and kind of play around and see what you want to do.
Wow, that's really excellent advice. I can't stress the importance enough of just building something simple. Take your feature set, cut it in half, focus on the core functionality, and get it out the door. You're going to get so much feedback from real users on what they actually really want, what they need, and it will help you focus on the most important part of your app, the core functionality. Everything else is just nice to have, and you could add it in later.
That's super advice. That's great because, yeah, you want to measure everything. You want to talk to, like, we actually talk to users, like chat with them, and analytics and chatting with users, just really understanding what they like and what they don't like. There's nothing more important than that, because you can imagine that the most important things for people is something that they don't even care about. So that's the only way to really find out, is let them try it out and see. Yeah, I think we're like super lucky to, if you run across AudioKit and if you're watching this interview, you're super lucky because we, the world of mobile development is such a place where it's so much fun where you can actually build and make things. I always feel like when I get to like work in the morning, I feel so lucky I can just come in and play around with these cool things like audio, like all the audio stuff, and just build things. I feel like I'm like a kid playing around with my toys, and specifically with mobile, where everything's very personal and very touch oriented, and with AudioKit, where everything is like all around music, which so many people are passionate about. It's just so much fun. And if people are actually, and then the end users are getting a benefit from it, it's just a great place to be in. So yeah, definitely encourage people to build stuff, to play with stuff, to try it out, play with the tech stuff, play with the business models. And it's a great playground for that. And I think it's kind of like, I think where humanity is kind of going, that's like a different, like a moral discussion if it's a good place or not, but we're kind of going to a place where people are coding experiences for other people, creating experience for other people. And the main way we kind of consume these experiences right now is our mobile devices, and the main way we create them is kind of like these app development ecosystems. And I think just being part of that is like really being in a really interesting place where you can build these experiences and get them in front of so many people and have them use for their creativity or for like remembering what's like their lives, taking photos and videos of whatever's going on, and like sharing their moments with each other. So it's a really cool place to kind of be in this day and age. So yeah, I think people should definitely do it.
So backing up, you're in Tel Aviv right now. I've heard Israel has a burgeoning development scene.
Do you want to talk more about the development scene in Israel?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm not sure if everyone knows, but Israel is kind of known as Startup Nation. There's a famous book by that name that kind of gave the city its name, the country, yeah. It's a good book if anyone wants to try it out. And so actually Israel has been a home to a lot of really big startups over the past 20 years. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is because it's a young country and people are really driven here to succeed. So a lot of people look for that kind of, let's make something big. The mentality here is less of let's get a day job and just make a living, but rather let's do something big. Let's make something with a real big impact and succeed in a big way. And the other thing is because of like, obviously the army here is a big part of our lives. Everyone actually has to go to the army for around 3 years. Like men go for 3 years, women go for 2 years. And personally, I was there for 5 years. And a lot of the technology, because we're kind of in like a tense political situation, a lot of the technology comes from the army because the army is very high tech and very state of the art. There's a lot of technological units, and a lot of the innovation comes from that. So a lot of people spend their army time doing, kind of security tech and army tech, and then that gives them a lot of ideas that are relevant for like day-to-day life. Even if it's, it could be something that was army technology and would be transformed into medical technology or into music, or it can be very, it can have some very interesting uses. So those are some of the reasons for that. And then the ecosystem kind of grew out of that, and a lot of really successful startups. Some of the bigger ones are Waze, that sold to Google for $1 billion. And there's a company called Mobileye, which is kind of like computer vision for cars, that was sold for $15 billion just recently. And PrimeSense is the company that did like the, how the Xbox used to have a Kinect. So they like you could play video games just like with your gestures. So they did the technology for that, and then Apple bought them and they use that for Face ID. And there's just a ton of companies in a really big scene, and you feel it everywhere you go. A lot of meetups, everyone doing like startups in tech, a big community. It's great.
Yeah, well, I hope you still talk to us when you're a billionaire.
I'm not sure that the apps are the best way to do that. I think like if you want to make the billions, you have to go for something that's really, really big. But I think we're trying to build a nice lifestyle business around our consumer apps. Hopefully we can do that.
That's very cool.
Okay, for those watching, you actually built both these apps with AudioKit. Do you want to talk a little about how you found AudioKit and why you decided to use AudioKit? And you even contribute back to AudioKit, which is awesome.
I contribute a little. I think I definitely like to do more. So honestly, JamLooper originally was built using the amazing audio engine by Brian Tyson, yes, which is amazing as well. When I was looking, so because it was a side project, kind of our premise was we're not going to go into like the really deep details of the audio. We're going to try to look for a good toolkit that could help us do it, and we'd focus more on the experience and kind of like patching everything together to make a cool app. I definitely like to get into like the nitty-gritty of audio programming sometime, but again, like with a 2-person team working on a bunch of apps, and we might do a few more new ones in the future. We kind of try to focus more on the high-level stuff and then try to use what's available for the low-level stuff, which is why things like the Amazing Audio Engine and AudioKit are so amazing. So Amazing Audio Engine was great to jump into. It's pretty easy to use. I wasn't, like, the results were great, but I wasn't able to achieve like amazing results with it. I felt there was room for improvement, but for the first version, it was definitely good enough. And then we started working on like an improvement to the app, a new version, and actually noticed that it was being deprecated. And Brian, the guy behind it, kind of had a big notice there, and everyone should be using AudioKit. So I had noticed AudioKit the first time around. The first time was around like February 2016. And I think it was more like in an initial state. And then later that year, when I saw this message from Brian, I checked AudioKit again, and I was like blown away. It really looked like the website looked amazing, and all the playgrounds were there, and it just looked like the perfect thing to use. So I was like, okay, I know, whatever it takes, I'm going to port the app to AudioKit so they can like keep using it, and that has definitely been the case. So what I loved about AudioKit first was really there's so many resources to get into it. There's even more now, but when I started about a year and a half ago, there was a ton. So the playgrounds are amazing. I love that it was in Swift because I had moved to Swift completely, and it was much more comfortable to use something that was actually written in Swift. With iOS, you can definitely use things that were written in Objective-C, and it kind of works seamlessly. But if you want to jump into the code and see how things are written and make some changes, and it is more interoperable when it's written in the same language. So I was happy about that. I loved that it had, initially for JamLooper, I saw us using like a very small subset of the capabilities, recording, playback, effects, pretty much that was what we're going to use. But just the fact that there was so much more available and we could easily branch out into that later really gave me a good feeling. Like it would actually, I kind of felt like it would actually give me more ideas on what to do because, AudioKit can also do synthesis, it can also do like sampling, it can also do all this stuff. I can add that in any moment, and it would probably just like plug into what I'm doing. So I was super excited about that. And yeah, it's actually been pretty much as I expected in terms of giving me ideas, making everything possible, easy to tweak the code. And yeah, about kind of contributing back to AudioKit. So I was lucky enough to meet Ari and a bunch of people from a bunch of like AudioKit core contributors and like very central, like high profile users of AudioKit at WWDC in 2017 in San Jose. I think I kind of got that meetup started because I wrote in the group, I was like, hey, is anyone going to WWDC? I'd love to meet other AudioKit users. And that kind of Ari like was excited about that. And kind of, we had a meetup with about 6 or 7 people. And first of all, everyone was so nice and smart and interesting. It was great to meet Ari and kind of understand what everyone was doing with AudioKit. And yeah, and Ari had a few ideas on how we can improve. Like he loved the UI for JamLooper and thought it would be great to take some of that, like the inspiration from that and add it to the playgrounds, into the UI elements in AudioKit. We did some of that, not enough. I think I should definitely do more. It's kind of hard to do everything with all the apps, but I'll try to contribute some more in the future. But yeah, the community is amazing. I met a guy called Mark Jeschke who does Drumkick, which is an amazing app. Like you can do all kinds of drumming on your iPad or iPhone. And he's been so helpful to me since then. He's been beta testing our apps and sending us like the super detailed feedback. And just like everyone there was just amazing, great community. And there's, a lot of ways to reach out to people and get help. And it's a great, wonderful community.
In addition to everything else you do, you've also contributed some UI stuff back to AudioKit.
Yeah, so I met Ari at WWDC 17, and he really loved the UI for JamLooper, and he thought maybe we could help a little bit with adding that stuff to like the playgrounds and the UI code for AudioKit. So I spent some time adding some of that in. Not enough. I definitely want to do more of that. Super busy with all the apps and everything that's going on. But yeah, it was like a huge pleasure to kind of contribute. And also, I got to fix a couple of bugs around iOS 11, which was coming out at that time. So yeah, it's been amazing just doing my little thing. But I definitely want to do more and kind of feel like with everything that AudioKit has given me, I'd love to give back. So I'm gonna try to do some more of that.
Wow, what an awesome video. I'd encourage everyone to check out their apps, Disco Videos, and Jam Looper. See you next time.
This has been Matthew Fetcher. Thanks for watching.
AudioKit is a free and open source project. You can learn more at audiokitpro.com.
Let's go way back. Let's go way back. Let's go way back. Let's go way back. Let's go way back.